ke mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e au, o nā mele.
Okay, beginning with ho'opono. Ho'opono is that process to be pono. Ho'o means to cause to happen. Pono, to be prepared, to be just, to be morally correct. In the past lectures, I talked about going to the Mauna, and on Kapualoha plaque that they have, it spells out those behaviors that they would not like to see take place on the Mauna. Yeah. And like no smoking. If you're addicted, you have to smoke. You got to go outside the boundaries. So that's written up. Definitely no alcohol, no drugs on the area designated. You got to go outside the boundaries. Talk about if you see things on the ground, like rubbish or something fell out, don't walk past it. Pick it up and throw it in the trash. If you see someone needing help, don't stop and think, oh, I wonder if I should help them. Just go and do it. Yeah, without thinking. Because those are actions of aloha. There's actions of aloha. If you got to smoke, you know you're not supposed to do it there. When you leave, you're leaving to recognize and to keep the kapu is your aloha. Yeah. And out of the series, a number 7 or thereabouts was be pono. So kapu aloha is about being pono. In our class, as we think about it, it is being pono to restore balance and harmony with someone else. Because this is a ho'oponopono class. If you're not prepared yourself to do what is necessary to restore balance in a relationship, then what is necessary to have this happen? So this semester up till now, we have been talking about recognizing pono begins with your mind, your body, your spiritual leanings, and your emotion. And all of these elements are examined to find out where you are out of balance. When you don't feel good, something's out of balance. It could be in one of those 4 areas. And so you begin with yourself. It always begins with yourself. And then we talked about how do you go about doing this. And I propose it is one in which you recall what happened that caused you to feel uneasy. and you backtrack in your mind what was said or done to you that triggered a negative response. So this process is also known as self-reflection. And self-reflection is recalling. And self means not so much recalling what happened, who said what and everything, but looking at what the impact was on you, look at what your reaction was from that response. And did your reaction create and contribute to the tension or the pilikia between you and another person? Yeah. Ho'opono, it is not an effort to self-reflect, to see who is right and who's wrong. It is not about finding fault. Because if you're only going to find fault, and if you maintain the posture of being, I'm right and you're wrong, the problem not going to be solved. You cannot bring it to balance anymore. And the aloha that you want to have in a relationship with the other person is not allowed to come through. It's going to be held back because you may not feel that you're wrong, therefore you shouldn't have to lower yourself. In making pono, it is not about lowering yourself and somebody above you. It is strictly on looking at your acts of commission and your acts of omission, and looking at those feelings and emotions that are negative that have emerged and prevent you from feeling like you can shake hands once again. Yeah. So, in our class, we had talked about, with examples, we talked about how do you prepare yourself? And what was identified is, once you know your kuleana for causing or contributing to that pilikia, then to right yourself, you pule to the power you believe in. And you ask for forgiveness. And you ask for guidance. And you ask for forgiveness. Pono is only about self. But if you're unbalanced with somebody else, there's that other person too you got to think about. They may not come around anymore. They're hesitant to show their faces. You know? So even if you pule to recognize your kuleana, what you did, and you ask your power for forgiveness, and you can feel okay, that's only half. It's also recognizing, how do I help the other person? Yeah. In one class session, we realized, hey, not everybody ready to accept making pono with each other. So The concept of readiness is very key. The amount of time you took for yourself to get ready and to know what to do, the other person wasn't aware. So when you go to them, they still give you the stink eye because they're not ready. But if you truly are in alignment yourself, you will recognize this act of mine is because I recognize what I did and I want my aloha to come out. And because I come to you, it doesn't mean you're going to be ready in the same way. And I just want you to know that's okay, but I only ask, how can we still become friends? Because that's what I want. How can we become friends? So I would like to leave with you. If there's a time when we can get together and straighten it out, I'm ready. Yeah. And it's okay for you to get yourself ready. In the university, we give the details in how you can bring yourself into alignment spiritually. And when I talk spiritually, I put it up here because this is where our aumakua resides. Over here is a connection with the people who are living today, and that's where we have the pilikia. The na'au is where I feel the butterflies. I feel the tension. I feel the mix-up. It's in the gut. So I have to be guided by looking at my body, the tension in the na'au, my mind, what I think about what happened, and what I can figure out what things happened. Was it the behavior? Was it how I came across? Was it what I said? And then after I said all of this, then what did I see in the reaction of the other person? Yeah. Was there a negative reaction from the other person? So my mind reviews all of this for me. And then it helps me to know and figure out where I contributed. Sometimes the intention is not to hurt someone. It's just that sometimes we forget and we just say things without realizing it, or we do things without realizing it. And like one scenario we had, I think the boy went to go pick his grandmother up and came to the luau and was late. He was supposed to help grate the coconuts. Well, he never think about his actions, what was going to happen, yeah. So sometimes we don't think, but the negativity takes place. So, ho'opono means to bring yourself in alignment, to right yourself with the power you believe in. So, you become pono, but the relationship not pono because the other person is there. You have no control over what they're going to do or say. But if you demonstrate a level of reaching out for forgiveness and understanding, it may encourage the other person to take that step and look at what happened. I think all of you here have done informal ho'opono. How many times you've gotten upset because of something happened? And then you say to yourself, oh my goodness, how stupid. Oh, I better call and tell them come over for coffee. The realization you did something stupid, the realization of calling them over for coffee is your effort to ho'opono. Yeah. So what I'm describing is something that perhaps all of you have done. With my kids, I do it all the time. Because you know why? They don't listen all the time. Can you imagine? I have a bucket of misdeeds, and if they don't listen all the time, oh, the pile is high. As a parent, as my child, I'm not going to give up on them. So, I'm going to make up my mind, let it go. And forgive me, because I got to look at myself. Did I make them a promise? And did I break it? And is that why they're acting the way they're acting? So I have to look at my part of how I contribute to the situation with my kids. And once I identify that, I'm not going to wait for them to get over the hoo-hoo, because kids can be hoo-hoo for a long time. So I'm going to settle it here and there, and I'm going to write how I help them to recognize what they failed to do is how I teach them to keep promises. Yeah, that is parenting. And all of us have been in that parenting role. And we know that as they get older, they get more responsibilities. We got to give them opportunity to learn the expectations and the rules. But after a time, we got to make it known it's steadfast. No more leeway. You're supposed to know it already and should do it without my telling you. Like doing the chores. Yeah. So early in life for all of us, we have done ho'opono. So this course teaches us to go beyond our family, beyond our kamali'i, because we rub elbows with the people we work with, because we don't like what's going on. So the detail by which we understand pono in this class should better enable us to engage with other adults. Yeah. So if you need reminders, think about what you've done with your kids. Yeah. Because you had to bring yourself to a state of pono in order to still relate with the children. You're not going to be habut with them and expect them to stay in the room all the time. So, and I have said, if you understand this process of bringing yourself into alignment, that with different age groupings, it's going to take a different kind of approach, like how we do with our kids, like how we might do with our people that we work with, yeah? Or like how we might approach organizations who are oppressive and who are colonizers. We have to be in alignment with that. A good example of that is the kapualoha. Yeah. Bring yourself in alignment. You know what you're doing there is pono. And be steadfast with kapualoha. Is an approach for dealing with government and agencies. Yeah. Learning those basic ways of review is exactly what you have to do with people who are out of sync, like a family whose pilikia is so deep that they no longer talk to each other. Yeah. And if you go in to help them do ho'oponopono, you yourself have to be pono. And you yourself have to recognize, I cannot get sucked in to the drama of that family. You gotta remain out of it. To be a haku ho'oponopono for your ohana, where you have experienced the pilikia too, is going to be the most difficult. Because you hear their response, you hear how they're talking. You can get dragged in, and your memories are going to trick you. It's going to trigger you to dredge up the feelings you have in yourself. And that interferes. Yeah. So, how do you help people? Initially, you might just want to go to 102. Why take the most difficult numbers when it's much easier to do with smaller numbers of people? Yeah. So, as a haku trained to do ho'oponopono, I follow in the style of Mary Kavenapuku'i from Ka'u. And her style of ho'oponopono recognizes when you call the extended family together, you have to set the parameters of what they're going to discuss. Yeah. They have to know why they're being called together. And it doesn't mean that they all agree that that's the problem. But all of them might think, oh, that's the problem, going to open the door so I can say my piece. That kind of attitude has to be dealt with before you enter into ho'oponopono. Because Tutu says, everyone must come with the right intention. And the right intention is to be open to hear what is being said, to tell the truth, to speak with aloha, not anger, and to know at some points, if something comes up and you're not ready, to be honest means you have to say, no, I don't agree. And the haku has to accept that. The haku will accept. Yes, I agree, as well as no, I don't agree. The haku may decide to explore why you don't agree. And if it is something that can be dealt with then and there, the haku may decide to go after it. So the person who's not ready can understand why they're holding on and holding back. But if the haku determines it's another area of pilikia, the haku has to point out to that person, I know where you're coming from, but from my perspective, that's a different issue from the one we're talking about. I would like for you to consider, put it aside so that we can take the time to really examine it, thereby giving the person who said the option no, because they're assured that their concern is going to be put up for discussion. Yeah. So a yes and a no answers are being truthful. So I don't make fun of that, or I don't feel offended. I ask for the truth and I accept the truth. So it's a matter of how I deal with it. Yeah. In the discussion, we have an opening prayer to begin the whole thing. And that opening prayer reinforces the spiritual nature of ho'oponopono as being the key foundation for this effort. Spirituality brings to the gathering a recognition of each individual's potential, to recognize who they bring into that circle for discussion. I acknowledge the spiritual entities that you call by your own family name. I acknowledge the Christian elements, the Buddhist elements, the Aumakua elements. But I want every person in the family to bring the individual or the spiritual entity that they turn to. It might be the uncle that they looked up to because he was fair. For the younger person, it might be the grandparent. Every time they hurt, they would go to the grandparents. And the grandparents knew exactly what to say and how to say it. So whatever the name of that spiritual entity is, I ask each person to bring it to the circle with them. Now, why do I do that? Ho'oponopono requires maturity. Yeah? And maturity implies being level-headed, being able to remain cool, being able to take the time to listen so you can hear. That level of maturity to say things in a kind way, not hurtful way. The hurtful way is like my kids when they go tit for tat and they argue against each other. We're not asking for that kind teenage behavior. or small kids' behavior. We're asking for the mature behavior that can be kind. Yeah. So talking with aloha is what is expected. The level of maturity of a youngster is different from the level of maturity of a 20-year-old. I don't expect a 20-year-old to act like that 11-year-old. I expect them to act at that age of maturity. Yeah. And so these are expectations that I talk about in the prayer. So it's like me making a promise for each one of us that that's how we're going to do this discussion. Yeah. So it's really set under the umbrella of a higher power, which means I have to be maka'ala. I have to be my eyes, the two, but with my third eye. My eyes can pick up cues, body language. Yeah. Because body language, maka'ala, is going to help me to help everyone to abide by what I just talked about. Maturity, aloha, complete honesty, being kind, being humble, being positive. So I have two eyes to help me, but I also have the eyes that pick up cues. I have two ears that hear what's being said, how it's said. But you know, my ears also pick up the kauna behind all of that. So with the two ears, I'm hearing, but I have a third ear that seems to imply something, but they're not saying it. Yeah? Words that talk about, well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure. Yeah? That I'm not sure is a cue for me to find out what is it that doesn't make you unsure. Yeah? So I use the third ear to know what questions to pose. And in this discussion, it is mahiki. Although we all agree we're going to deal one issue at a time, we only human. Although we say that, but as we're listening to people talk, our mind jumps to something that is talked about, is hinted about, that I remember, and then I get stuck on that issue. Yeah. So when I get stuck on that issue and it's my turn, I'm not talking about what's happening here because I went lock in to something else that I heard. So it becomes my job to help the person see the worthiness of that issue is valid. But this time we're talking about this. So if it's okay, I'd like to talk about it at a later time. And then I bring that person back to the issue at hand. Yeah. So this is a process of many things happening at the same time. So the person who does haku ho'oponopono has to use 3 eyes and 3 ears and try to figure out how to bring them all back together. Yeah. The whole effort in that discussion is I go to one person at a time and I ask them, what happened? So, description of the scene will come out. But right after they finish with description of the scene, I ask them, so how do you think you contributed to that scene? In other words, I'm getting after acts of commission. Like the young man who came late to the luau. Why do you think people at the luau are upset with you? I don't know. You don't know? So, what was your part in putting the luau together? Oh, I was supposed to grate the coconut, make the coconut milk, so that Mama can have it to make haupia. But you know what happened when you didn't come in time? Never have coconut milk. And then the young man can be surprised. How come? I would tell sister to do it for me because I had to do this other thing. Sister said she would do it. So now we know he won't cover himself, yeah? So we got to turn to sister. Then sister said, oh, I was busy because I still have to do these things for my job. I was thinking of doing it after I finish work, then I come home. Not knowing that if Mama going to make the haupia, she needs time for the haupia to gel. She no like last minute, because at the last minute, Mama herself got to get ready for the luau. So Mama is steaming, because never do it 3-4 hours in advance, give her time to do her job. So now he's finding out, because he didn't do it but passed it on. The pilikia now is with Mama, with sister, because she's so pissed off. Mama got to do his job. And now he's pissed off with the other sister. He went go ask to kokua, and she never kokua. Because by the time she came back to do the job, a couple of hours before, was already done. So how do we untangle that kind of situation, yeah? So we begin with brother. And we find out how he then assigned it to somebody else. And now he's surprised that sister never do the job. Now he understands why everybody hoo-hoo with him. Because before then, he's pissed off too. Why you mad with me? Now he has information he didn't have. Now his anger up here comes down. Now I can understand why. And I don't blame all of you. Mama shouldn't be doing that. Even more so now it comes down, because he recognizes the consequence of selecting somebody who was not reliable. The consequence of what's happening to Mama and her being upset. And the other sister upset because this is happening to Mama. Now, instead of being on the defensive, he can say, I did that. That's right, it was my fault. And when a person that has the first reaction of hoo-hoo gets missing pieces of information that help to qualify the situation, his anger goes less. And then when he sees how it's related to Mama, even more so now he sees how what he failed to do, he failed to keep his promise. It affected Mama. And it affects Mama because he loves Mama. So he even gets more humble when he acknowledges the negative consequence of his failure to keep his promise. Yeah. So this is what the Haku Ho'oponopono, through the questioning of one party to the next party, to the next party, to Mama. Missing pieces of information begin to come through. Yeah.
How do you get him from not being mad at the sister? How do you keep him from not getting mad at the sister? I mean, he's realizing it, but isn't he still mad at the sister?
He may. And because what I will have to do is say, your sister seems to have been so busy with what she's working on. What made you select her? It's his choice. He happened to choose the sister who's so busy, not going to argue with him, so he can go out and do what he wanted to do. So I work with him and looking at the choice of the person. Was that in his mind, is that person reliable? Or do you know that this sister is so busy with her job, and why did you select her and not your other sister? And you know what he might come out to say is, it's because I wanted to be able to go and just know I left it in somebody's hands. So when you make the choice, it was to your benefit, so you could leave. Yeah. So, and in this scenario, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So I would talk about the choice they made. And if you knew you needed somebody reliable, did you find out from your sister if she had time to do it? Because you know she's always busy. Did you bother to ask her knowing she's always busy? I never think about it because I had to go. So then he begins to realize his area was a bad choice. He knows the situation. So he cannot just be angry with her because he wanted to skedaddle. Yeah. So Ho'oponopono begins to look at the many facets, yeah, in the choices. Yeah. And so part of the questions I raise is, how do I get information that connects this person in selecting and in agreeing to do the task that went wrong? And in that way, I'm hoping for them to recognize their failure, to be helpful. So my job is to help people to look at acts of commission, acts of omission, or the failures to make good choices. Yeah. And when I find that the discussion seems to now, the tone seems to now reflect more of an understanding and of people's part in not doing their kuleana, then I ask the question, what do you folks want to do now that you know this? Mama is upset. You're upset. But each of you know what you failed to do. Because they are ma'a, or they know about ho'oponopono, they may say, I want forgiveness. Yeah. Mama, and they'll go to Mama first. Mama, please forgive me. I know you asked me this ahead of time, and I said yes. But my friend wouldn't call me, and I wanted to go with my friend. And so I would raise the question, so are you saying sometimes your friends are more important in following through with rather than your commitment to Ohana? So I bring it out in the open, yeah? Because it means choices on his part. It was to go with the friend rather than following through with the Ohana.
But Auntie, how do you not get hurt? Like if it was
And-
more important for him to go with his friends than the family. How would
Exactly.
you not get
And
hurt?
that hurts Mama.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So then I might turn to Mama. Mama, how you feel about what your son just said? She said, I'm so hurt because his friend more important than me. And for a child to hear the mama say that, oh, it's a blow in the na'au. Yeah. So what do you want to do now? What you want to do, boy? Yeah. So I bring them from the interaction up here, which is all here. I bring them down to what happens, and then how do you feel about that, Mama? I get to the feelings. Yeah. And once you realize that you miscalculated and you made a choice that reflects you don't care, you don't have aloha, cut you to the quick. Yeah. So when I ask the question, what do you want to do now? In the case that I was just describing, the boy was the first one to say, Mama, I love you, forgive me. He related to Mama's eha, yeah? And then I need to go to every single person. So, when it's all done among themselves, then I remind them we've been participating under the umbrella of all the people that we believe in that help to guide us spiritually. They've been present. They've witnessed all that we said. What do you want to do with them? Mihi, Kala, and Oki with them too. Because they know in the minds of the spiritual entities, they have witnessed my heva. So I got to right myself with the spiritual entities. Yeah? So that pule is one where you ask that everyone release their transgressions and that they be forgiven and that they will be enabled deep inside to find peace within themselves because the spiritual powers will forgive them. I, as a haku, I utter to them, please take the transgressions to the deepest depth of the ocean so it never more comes up again. And because it's removed, may there be peace. and love left in all in this circle. So there's a lot of explicitness. So in the pule, I present to them what the situation is, what we are looking as a result, and we ask for their help to make it happen. Yeah. And Tutu says, when you are genuine in your pule with the spiritual entities, they will forgive you and they will make it happen inside of you. Yeah. So once that's power, and we've gone all the various factions within the Pilikia, if there's no other areas, then the family is okay. We have dealt with the Pilikia. But if it just so happens something else happened to interfere, my asking, is there any other concern, allows another person to put it out on the table. And then we check with everybody. This is brought before us. Do we have the time? Are we all in agreement? We need to discuss this. Yeah. Usually, once we get through the layers, I'm able to pick up if there's a hesitance, because somebody might not be as eager to forgive somebody else. Yeah. So usually comes before we go to Keakua. But just in case, after we finish that big one, I ask. By that time, the family is enveloped with family love. And there's nothing yet. Yeah. So that is the process of ho'oponopono. Sometimes when a family discussion gets together, and if it's really deeper because the pilikia is of a deeper concern, once we pow and we forgive, whatever house we're in, there's always food. Or the members of the family going in the kitchen and they're going to get ready some food and some drinks. Yeah, Hawaiian style, food and something liquid refreshment is always part of restoring balance. So you do the psychological, the emotional balancing, but all that time, oh, you mad, you hoo-hoo, oh, there's an emptiness inside, and you find, oh, the food tastes so ono afterwards. It doesn't matter what you have, because all that sprinkling of love that has come through. Yeah. That is pani. Pani is the closing ritual. So it is the recognition that you deal with the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual. And you burn up all that energy because you're concentrating and you're focusing intensely. So it's burning it up. And after it's all power, oh, so exhausted. Anybody like eat? Yeah. So the informal way is families do not prepare for pani. But it's so natural that if you know this is your home, you open and you recognize maybe we need to have something to fill the inside of the opu. Yeah. So that would be pani. Yeah. Sometimes the pilikia is so hurtful that the family may decide to mokapiko. Mokapiko is cutting of your connections with the rest of the family. In many instances, it's the prelude to moving away from the family physically, moving out of the house, or if you're out of the house, it means not coming over anymore. I have found in many instances concerning land, the dispute over land, it causes irreparable damages over years. But you know, time has a way of helping you not to feel the sharp edges as much. Time has a way of doing some healing. Full healing might only come 10, 15, 20 years later. Yeah. And it may only come at the death of a relative, where you recognize, I'm still a member of this family, and I enjoyed being here. Maybe it's time I deal with it again. Yeah. I've had situations that end up like that. In one, the eldest son can get along with the dad, bang, bang. He moved to the mainland, got married to a woman on the mainland, raised his family on the mainland, and only brought his kids and the wife at the father's funeral. And he only came to the father's funeral because the wife insisted, my children need to know who the grandfather is. And because now he's more mature, he has his own kids, he now sees the argument that he had with his dad not being so serious, but it was serious at that time. So he has a chance to make amends with dad because he can go to the coffin. Sometimes at funerals, the mortuary provides private time, not when it's the announced funeral day, but days before, you get to meet with the body. Yeah. In that kind of privacy, ho'oponopono can take place with the deceased. And that's what this young man did with his dad. Yeah. Let me go that what I described to you is a very formal ho'oponopono. But like pono, all of us have had the experience in an informal way. You know, love connections have a way of when you see the person before the body and they break down. I don't need to know what was said between my brother and my father. All I know is I see the love coming through. And I see by the time my brother leaves my dad, he would make it right with my dad. I forgive him. I no need to know. Yeah. Love connections go beyond the obvious. And just seeing that interaction between my brother and our dad. If my brother feels he's been forgiven, I can forgive him. It wasn't with me. I was mad because of what happened to my dad. Yeah. Unless your brother did something directly with you, then you have a right to hold on. But if I was mad because of what he did to Papa, because I see him in an informal way working it out, oh, my heart with aloha open to my brother, because I love my brother. I never cut him out of my life. Yeah. So there's an informal, implied expectation of how families allow love to come through, and that when it's genuine and it's demonstrated, we embrace it. We accept it. Yeah. For a person to hang on to the pilikia that didn't happen to you directly but somebody else, and you're not moved by this genuine emotional exchange at the casket, then I would want to look at, why am I hanging on? What am I missing that I cannot forgive? Yeah. Not that we're here to solve the problems, but I hope that the explanation and the mo'olelos provide you in a graphic way those steps. You open the session with a pulevehe. You go into the discussion, which is the mahiki, and the mahiki deals with one issue at a time, but it focuses on hihia, entanglements. Each party's acts of commission, acts of omission, negative emotions that create difficulties, and we examine the consequences of one's actions. Like the young man, now he got to look at the consequences on his mama and how it hurt her. Yeah. So he's responsible for consequences. And out of it, we talk about the concrete, but we gotta get to the emotional impact and how people feel loved or cared for. Or am I just something that's here? Yeah. But getting them to understand, because pieces of the scenario or pieces of information are missing, comes out in the discussion. When I get a sense that everybody moved from the up here, they're now down here, and the understanding is based on their worth and their value to the other person, the love for each other. Only at that point, I might say to them, is there anything else that needs to come out? Do you folks understand what you have to do? What do you want to do? usually in an ohana, if it deals with mama and daddy and the kids, generally speaking, the kids realize they hurt the parents. They will immediately ask for forgiveness. Yeah. That takes me down to the reconciliation phase where they ask mihi kala to be released and oki to be cut so that the entanglement is done away with. Then they take them to the next level of spirituality because we had the presence of them here. And their presence reinforces the need to be honest. Not tell some more half-truths, but to be really honest. When they mihi kala and oki with the powers that we brought into the circle, I ask again, is there anything else? And if they say no, then I pule for us to disperse. Yeah? And usually for Hawaiian families, I don't have to say anything about food. They always have food. And that aloha of hospitality, because other people came, yeah, from their houses. Food will be the next item, and that is the pani, to bring closure for that day. So in essence, this is about ho'oponopono. But if you recall, it is similar to ho'opono because the haku asks each individual, what did you do? How did you relate? And what was your attitude? So I help each one to express their acts of commission, the acts of omission, the negative emotions, and the negative consequences. Yeah. It's the same thing you do individually by yourself. When you do everyday kinds of things and you rub each other the wrong way, you just go up to them and you do it. Yeah. So this first stage in the coursework at West Oahu gives you that fundamental structure to prepare yourself to do ho'oponopono with others. The hard part is knowing what to say at what time and how to say it. But you know, that comes with study. That comes with the training. Not everybody is gifted to say the right things at the right time. So the next level is understanding people. Yeah. Understanding how to read the cues of people. And it's all about people and relationships. So I might be talking over here, but I'm talking, but then I'm going to glance around and come back to him, and I look at you and then I go back. So I'm looking at your nonverbal response to how I'm interacting with him. Yeah. And when I ask a question and I hear the response, but the response I'm hearing, I may not be looking at him because I'm looking at how you folks are responding to his response. Yeah. So if you only concentrate on that one person, you have the blinders, then you have no idea where the people are. I'm very people-minded, and I'm looking at the cues. Yeah. So in Ho'oponopono, you cannot just go to one class and another class and expect to be the practitioner. Yeah. All you're getting is information about what that means. Yeah. So the old traditional way of learning in your family with on-the-job training is where you refine your skills, your attitudes, and how you conduct yourself. So that part is all up here. Before you can actually do it, you got to take the little steps to try. Then you make mistakes, you correct it. And each time you deal with the simple pilikia, then it gets more complex. And then more complex in the sense of harder personalities to work with. Working with your family, get hard personalities, but you have a foundation of love. It's when you work with outsiders. You don't have that foundation of love, and trust becomes an issue. Yeah. So, what I talk about in the courses I have here is within the framework of the family. And is this you've only come several times, yeah?
Oh, I was sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super sick.
And I don't know if you've been aware of it, but my definition of the family is the child all the way to kupuna, who is alive. And upon death of the kupuna or any individual, the soul of that kupuna, the spirit of the kupuna, leaves the body. So that spirit that left the body is part of the family. Yeah. So it has that full range. And the last course that I have developed for training here, which would be like a 2-year, 3-year, deals with spiritual presence. Yeah.